Why we got the flash on? Jeez. So, Leicester win at home against a floundering Exeter Chiefs side that was just struggling to keep some momentum after winning last week. Leicester looking for a bit of confidence after a bit of no-shows, a loss here and there for over the last few weeks. Both these teams needing something from this week. And Leicester were the ones to get something, and something big. A bonus point win. I'm going to start off by saying that, and this is not just because of the cap on my head, I think the score should have been like 50-10 to Leicester if they just had slightly better execution. Let me explain. In the first half, Leicester played the perfect Leicester game, except from a lack of execution. Let me talk about the positives about it, and then let me talk about the negatives. So, complete control of the areas of the field that they wanted to play in. Territorial Bassett was fully with them. They played themselves into the right areas of the pitch by just hitting territory like nobody's business. That was off the back of great play on the counter-attack, great kicking, and of course a scrum that was completely dominant in the first half. Always an advantage. I've talked about this time and time again. If your scrum is winning you penalties, every time anybody knocks the ball on, you basically just put yourself in the opposition's half consistently. And with a team like Exeter Chiefs, who aren't really at the moment to lose, or even, let's give a more realistic example, Harlequins, where they're willing to play from their own half, try and build something off of that, which they could have done, but that's not who they are at the moment. If you just pin the opposition into the opposition half, it's great game management, it's excellent control of the tempo and the pace. However, Leicester knocked it on in a key couple of occasions when they probably should have scored tries. I think the attack was a bit lackluster, to be fair. I think it was really showing that when they had the interview for Peter Hewitt, who's the attacking coach, as they do, and I really like these. It's a nice little element to the game. The broadcaster will get an interview mid-game with the attack coach. The attack coach basically said, I just want to bludgeon them. And, that's okay if you scored like you did, but it kind of put themselves in a position where they were very tight. Towards the end of the game, the score looked better than the reality of what was going on. They kept bludgeoning. They knocked it on 2 or 3 times. They got turned over another time. I think at halftime, they should have had 4 or 5 tries, and they didn't, and it allowed Exeter to get back in the game. Exeter, first half. Got to give them credit where credit's due. They held on. They only went down 2 tries, even though it felt like the entire game was played in their half. For the entirety of the first half, the defence was solid. I think there's a lot of positives there for sure. I think Slade was good at trying to get them out of bad positions, but, they just couldn't quite do it often enough to make a real attack out of it. They did get a try. At halftime, it looked like, it was a matter of time until Leicester just ran away with the game. The score would suggest that if you're just looking at the box score post-competition. But if you look at how the game developed in terms of the scores, you'll see that Exeter did take the lead at some point. And that was, I think, because of a real clever coaching adjustment from halftime, where obviously I think the referee has in his head, scrum time, it's not going Exeter's way. He's probably got a little bit of bias. I don't think it is bias. I think Leicester were dominating Exeter at the scrum. Exeter wait for the first scrum in the second half to occur. They change the entire front row, and lo and behold, they start dominating. They've got a fresh front row, guys that are power boys, so all of their energy is going to be going into that first few scrums, and it started to work. I think Joe Hayes got found out quite a bit in that second half. He was almost the liability that cost Leicester the game. I think in his scrummaging, He was obviously the one struggling. I think Nicky Smith was holding his own, but Joe Hayes kept collapsing himself. He couldn't hold the weight of the loose head that was being brought on for Exeter, and it was flip reversing in terms of territory. I mean, just looking at my statistics in here, they had 3 lineouts that were their own in the first half. Compare that to Leicester, who I believed had 10 lineouts in the first half, just their own lineouts in the first half. And they had, from my counting, 5 scrums that were their own. Sorry, 6 scrums that were their own. 5 of them they won, and they got 3 penalties for them. So you can see that just from the stats of the lineouts and the scrums, the territory and the possession completely changed hands with this changeover. I think Exeter then did a much better job of attacking. They were more willing to attack outside of their own 22, but still within their own half, and they were rewarded for it. They made a couple of great tries. They got a scrum right on the 5 metre. Have to say, the solo effort by Henry Slade to decide there to go from the open side, change direction, go to the blind side, and have the winger looping round. Excellent set piece move, really well worked, lovely stuff to see. You know, it looked like Exeter could get the win. But then I think Michael Checker made an excellent decision of taking Joe Hayes off. He also brought off Jack van Poortvliet, who I did not think had the best of games. I thought he was okay. I just feel like he kind of gets in this mode where he's kind of mentally surfing, if that makes sense. He's not really reading what's in front of him. He's more just feeling himself inside of a system, feeling he doesn't have to make decisions for himself, which is fine if other people take the responsibility on their own shoulders to do that. But I think there was a definite change when Ben Youngs came on and he made his own decisions in what he was being able to do, both defensively on their own scrums and also ultimately to get the try in the end that kind of sealed it for Leicester to win the game. So yeah, I kind of feel like I've skipped over about 20 minutes of different play there just talking about this. So let's just rewind and recap. So Dan Cole comes on, scrum changes back round. Dan Cole's solid. I feel like the advantage goes back to Leicester, but in the scrum, but not in the same way as it was in the first half. So they just get that solid base to kind of regroup themselves and don't feel like they're getting penalised every time the big boys go down to feed at the trough. So that made a huge, huge difference, I think. The yellow card, I think that made a big difference, right? So can't remember what the score was at this point. It was either Exeter in front or Leicester had just scored to take the go-ahead lead and they were only 6 points ahead, so still within reach. It was either one of those two situations, but the reality, it doesn't really matter what those two situations are for the relevance in what I'm about to say here. But the reality of your substitute winger coming on and completely taking out a player that could have been, as far as a red card, maybe that would have been a bit harsh, but you're definitely getting sent off for at least 10 minutes for what you did. I mean, he just completely took Stewart out. He did not compete for the ball. His only competition for the ball was putting his hand in the air, like he was asking his teacher, am I in trouble? And the teacher said yes, because you didn't jump off the ground, you stupid idiot. So I think Will Rigg's decision there, I think maybe cost the team the game. They were definitely in positions where they could have scored, even with Will Rigg off the pitch. However, I do feel like maybe there was just 1 or 2 people missing in defence, on a scramble defence for Leicester's 2 tries. And the rest is history. So what do you take from this? Well, I think this is just how Leicester have to win games. I think you've seen them play Harlequins last weekend. It was the big game, the 26th of December. Was that a weekend? I don't even know. It's full on Christmas time. The last time they played against Harlequins, much more of an open game. And they draw the game and they only just get a draw on the last play. You think about their performance against Bristol, which I was at 2 weeks ago. We'll say it's 2 weeks. Not 100% sure. I think it is. And you think about that and you think, well, when they try to play an open, expansive game against a team that does that as their bread and butter, they get completely exposed because they're not that kind of team, right? Instead, what they need to focus on is what they did against Exeter, right? Using the high ball to take advantage of territory, to take advantage and create a chaotic defensive line, because, hell, they're not going to be inventive with creating space out of nothing like a Marcus Smith or something like that against a defensive line. You need to create the dog legs yourself. They have wingers that are really competitive under the high ball. Hassell-Collins has really added that as like a feather to his cap. I was thinking of a bow, feather to cap. He's added that as a feather to his cap, really solidifying himself in that Leicester team now at that wing spot and doing what Leicester wingers, what is required of them, you know, going under the high ball and winning ball back for them. Josh Bassett is doing what Josh Bassett does, getting under the high ball and winning ball for them. Getting the high ball, playing the territory. You've got probably the best fly half in the world at playing for territory. This is what Leicester have to do to win, whether it's Toulouse or Exeter or, you know, Nottingham Forest. Who knows, right? This is what Leicester have to do to win. Can they win the Premiership that way? Maybe. Can they win Europe that way? No. But in reality, when you try and play a different style of rugby, it just doesn't work, right? I could see right from the get-go, Leicester were trying to counter-attack on the wings, and they were trying to they would get a turnover, ship the ball out as wide as they could, as quickly as possible. And it almost turned into turnover for Exeter to just go in and walk in for a try on the other side. This is not who you are. Know your identity. What is your identity? This. Territory, game management, no mistakes, defence, you know? That's what they got to learn to... Not learn to do, I think they learned to do it today, but it's your bread and butter, right? And the problem is if that is your bread and butter, then your scrums need to be pitch perfect, which they were until the secondary front row came on, and that was really exposing, I think, for Leicester. Joe Hayes is seen as the replacement for Dan Cole, because Dan Cole's time is obviously limited, and I think Joe Hayes has been good, but he hasn't been, like... How do I explain this? Think about France, right? France, they play everything through 9, and they got Antoine Dupont to do that, right? The system doesn't change with Antoine Dupont not being in the team, and when I think Maxime Lucu came in, and they still tried to play through 9, their attack was non-existent. France's necessity to have a scrum half that is world-class to play their best rugby is essential. So, you know, Maxime Lucu's a very, very good player, but he's not Antoine Dupont. Just as Leicester, Dan Cole, as a great scrummager, you know, everything relies on the scrum. Winning your own scrums, never losing your own scrum, and eking out penalties in scrums as well for territory, right? Everything depends on that. So to have a prop that all of a sudden when another loosehead comes on and you start losing scrums and start losing penalties at it, that's catastrophic for Leicester in the way they want to play, or the way they should play. So, bit of an issue there. You know, some people have been saying Joe Hayes should be in England. This is definitely a step back in that crusade, I think. Not great. One thing I would say is positive, though, is the line-out. I don't think they lost a single one. Line-out organisation was great. They've got some great jumpers in there in terms of Cam Henderson, who's come back from injury, and Harry Wells, who's just a grinder. So that is a very good positive for Leicester, that they didn't lose a single line-out. And I think some of their attacks were actually set up by those line-outs. I'm thinking Dan Kelly, the one in the second half, that was from a line-out, and they took advantage of a dog leg that was there. Exeter, on the other hand, I mean, I just feel like that coaching decision to bring on the front row was a great decision, but it's like they got nothing else, right? They've got no... That was plan B. Plan B worked, and then when Leicester adjusted to change their tight head to accommodate this change, there was nowhere else for them to go, right? They've not got, you know, they've not got Harvey Skinner to come on at fly half on the bench for them. I don't know why not, whether he's injured or not. I've not been keeping up with that, but you know, if you've got him there, that's a great opportunity to bring him on at 10, change the pace of the game. Henry Slade, I think, played well at 10, but he's not the same attacking threat that Harvey Skinner is. Like they've got no plan B, and they kind of back themselves into a corner because they got no other options in terms of how to adapt to the game. So yeah, I mean, as a Leicester fan, you win the game. It was much closer than I think they should have made it. And you know, Exeter are scrambling around for answers on what to do this season. So that's it for me, really. Yeah, I'm going to call it there. See you in the next one.